Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Today we're here talking about, is our internet too fragile and are we putting too much dependence on it? So of course I saw this article. There were a couple articles in The Verge that I scanned by, and I looked at a few of these, and we're going to go ahead and pull these out. This is just two things that happened this week, but there were other issues last week, and this has been a long-going thing. In fact, some of the articles I was looking for I could not find. I know they existed. They're buried somewhere in my news articles and archives, but we're just going to go over kind of the basics and then kind of where we need to be going to in our society and in our civilization. So with that being said, the first of the articles, down detector is down. Isn't that ironic? It's down detector down. I can't tell. I can't get the down detector. Talk. All right, whatever. So down detector was down because CloudFlare had another outage. And this is why I have concerns about CloudFlare. Now, when 1.1.1.1 came out, or Quad 1 came out, I actually put it in my router system. And for the first week or so, it was a lot faster. But I find it's not a lot faster anymore. Now there's a lot of people on it. A lot of people know about it. And then I just started to see a few little odds and ends. Like, Cloudflare has some good privacy policies, but there's a lot of things that we have to be concerned about. Like the one day his CEO came out and said, you know, I woke up and I just didn't like this guy, so I decided to kick him off the internet. That's a little capricious, isn't it? And then, of course, they do seem to actively work against a lot of the Tor network stuff. So if you're on, depending on the version of Tor you're using, you can't use a lot of stuff that's on Cloudflare. Which is, of course, problematic. And anytime we centralize something and put everything on too many things, it produces a single point of failure. That is why I tell people, never, ever, 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 ever put anything verifiable by your phone number, okay? It's too easy to compromise your phone number. If you've put all of your accounts on two-factor authentication because that's what they wanted you to do, someone simply has to compromise their phone number and they can get access to about anything. So that's why I warn against, it's not just the phones, it's not just Cloudflare, it's anytime we are starting to rely on one thing. But the point we're going to make here is we are starting to rely on the internet entirely too much. So Cloudflare had an issue, and it caused a lot of weird events. So basically there was a massive spike in CPU usage. We'll look at their blog post next. But CoinDesk had a temporary issue saying that Bitcoin was only at $26. Well, it was well over 10,000 that day. Imagine seeing that. How many heart attacks did they cause? My Bitcoin just... that's just not cool. But all this because of Cloudflare's outage. So they responded. Basically what happened is they put forth an update. And this is why I've always vet my updates and I never install them automatically. So you should definitely go watch Chris Titus Tech's video that he did this morning about some of the things that's making Windows worse. And one of the things that he mentioned in that video is talking literally about the fact that Windows keeps pushing these forced updates and they're getting worse and worse and worse, because that's what happens when you lay off your entire QA team. So they pushed an update, and the update caused an instant CPU spike. So this was the global instant CPU spike. They pushed the thing out. It just pinged everything over. Basically caused an over spike in traffic, and then once they rolled it back, it went back down to normal. And so that's really what caused this internet outage, which affected a lot of different things. Now, there's some of these internet outages were affecting things like your social media. Now, when social media is impacted, this is bad. But I think it's getting worse, because as we start relying more on social media for updates and less on other places for getting our updates, like me, I wouldn't even think about if some internet crazy thing were down and there was an emergency. I'm not even sure I'd think about going and turning on a radio these days. I don't have a television to turn it on. I'd get stuff from the internet. So of course I have a couple different internet sources, but if those both go down, of course, even if I do go and turn on the radio, they're getting all their information from the internet. So if the internet's down, I don't know of any telegraph lines running anymore that they can get the data the old-fashioned way. This just in. Bombs are coming. You have 5 minutes. Okay, we don't see that. But as we're relying more and more and more on social media, if the internet comes down and knocks down the social media sites everyone's using, that is yet another issue. And so it's one thing though when social media goes down, but how do we deal with it when internet banking goes down? This actually happened. Wells Fargo, this is just earlier this year, February. Several Wells Fargo sites went down. People couldn't get on and access their online bill pay. Now, when that happens for an hour during a routine maintenance, you look and go, argh. But imagine trying to get on. You have a bill due, and you're trying to get on, and you're like, what do I do? I mean, how can I get on? What is going on here, right? And so this article here is how to deal with online banking outage. And so what they're saying, don't panic when there's an outage. Yeah, that's easy to say, but if there's an outage, I mean, that doesn't make my bills any more recently due. Of course, I don't actually use online bill pay to pay my bills. I usually just write them checks. I'm old school for having all these computers running around. I mean, that's kind of funny. The more I use computers for basic stuff, the more I go back to pencil and paper. All right, and that should be a sign for you. All right, so don't panic when there's an outage. Don't panic. Your creditor will just make more money by charging you a late fee. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. All right. Try another banking channel, guys. The article author here must be an incompetent moron. If your banking app doesn't work, try it on the computer. They go through the same network. Your banking app connects to the same network system. If it's an internet outage, it's an internet outage. This is not going to help. Pay bills directly with a creditor. You don't say. You don't say. That's why I send the bills in. Of course, you send them in like Comcast, There's actually a place I can go and take the bill in. There for a while, they're like, oh, we have a little bill payment machine over here. Let's go walk over. I'll show you how to use it. I say, sit your butt down in that chair. You're going to process my payment as usual. Yeah, I've actually told them that before. No, I'm not going in using your automated machine. You can do your job. In fact, why these Comcast employees are so excited to tell people how to use their automated machines, do you not realize that goes your job? That thing's taking your job. Y'all should be Luddites. Beating the thing down with a crowbar or something. Really? I mean, really, don't destroy property at work. That's another good way to lose your job. But don't be sitting here being encouraged and telling people to go use the online bill pay system. There goes your job. That's your job, buddy. All right. Check for fees, fraudulent activity after you're online. You should be checking for fees and fraudulent activity every time you go on your online banking, by the way. Ditch the idea of getting a backup option unless, dun, dun, dun. See? 3 dots, dun, dun, dun. All right. You may feel like you want to have a backup bank account to avoid the scenario again, but the approach is an extreme one. I think I have accounts at 3 banks, or is it 4 banks? I don't remember. All right. While an occasional outage isn't rare, repeated outages at the same bank would signal a problem. If you feel like a backup bank is necessary, you ought to do something bolder. Close your accounts? I don't know. Hey, this article is comical to read. I find it to be fairly fruitless information. But it begs that question, that if we become more dependent on online banking systems, the article I was looking for that I couldn't find is there was actually an internet outage in the EU, hit several EU countries not long ago. It was just a few months ago. And that actually prevented people from buying and selling products. You couldn't go in and there and access your, you couldn't go buy your lattes. You couldn't go buy your groceries. Now, I of course go to the grocery stores and pay cash for everything. I don't generally have an issue, but of course there was an outage at Target. This was an interesting one. This was just a couple weeks ago. This was a Target local network. So this wasn't an internet outage, but I'm kind of showing this. When this outage happened, they couldn't even take cash. So it was something with Target's entire network, which did actually go through the internet. It knocked out their cash registers online, knocked out all their registers. They couldn't do credit payments, I don't think. They couldn't do anything. It was just became a massive customer walkout of Target because they get in there, the cash registers weren't working. We had, they couldn't even do manual payment processing. Everything was shut down because they had a computer glitch. Now, this is more an issue with a computer glitch, but in internet outage, if there's a major internet outage, since all of the Target registers are all controlled by one central corporate server, an internet outage would actually cause the exact same thing. So be aware of that. Of course, I don't really shop at Target either anyway. They start doing some crazy things that I'm not necessarily in agreement with. Now, of course, okay, we can't buy and sell our goods. That's actually bad because if it gets bad enough, then people can't buy food, especially in populated cities. Man, there's an advantage to being a backwoods guy who knows how to hunt, got some guns and bullets on hand. Man, if there's too much of an outage, I'm heading to the mountain right over there and I'm going to shoot me a deer. All right. Now, what happens when it's medical data? Again, I was looking for the article. There was a single internet line down through Nevada and it was severed and it knocked off several hospitals. This is a very, very similar one. This was late last year, so December, just 6 months ago. There was a CenturyLink, which is a big Western internet provider. They had an outage that knocked out 911 and hospital patient records. So you try to call 911, your call could not be dialed. That's a serious problem. And, you got someone dying on on your kitchen floor or something. You kind of need to get somebody there. Who are you going to call? The Ghostbusters may not be an option. There's an internet outage and everything's relying on the internet, yo. All right. But this internet outage knocked out 911 and it knocked out several hospital systems. So you go into the hospital and your incompetent fool of a doctor's like, I can't treat you because I can't access your patient records because they're all on a central server and the internet's down. All right. This is why there's an advantage to them old school doctors that's got your patient records in a locked filing cabinet. Excuse me. Hold on. Excuse me. Hold on. Oh, man. Oh, there's your file. Oh, yeah, I see what you were looking at. All right, let's go ahead and get some stuff going in here. Now I know what I can do, all right? So you got that that's going. In fact, I didn't think of this one. Actually, two months ago when I went to pay my Comcast bill, Comcast servers were out internally. They couldn't process payments in-house. They were still able, since I was paying with a check, like if I were paying with a credit card, they couldn't have processed the payment. But since I was paying with a check, they were just able to write me a receipt, and it's all good. So when an internet outage goes out and it knocks out medical systems, emergency systems, this is a huge deal. And then, of course, there was an earthquake. Now, this article is not related to the earthquake in California that just happened. This is a couple of years ago, but it's still a valid article. Natural disasters cause emergency threats. If you remember, internet was knocked down in Florida for a while, and that caused some serious issues. The stuff that happened in Orlando a decade and a half ago, that caused some serious stuff. Internet telecommunication goes down. The more our society becomes dependent on these services. I mean, just look at what's happening in Baltimore. That's not an internet outage, but a crypto or a ransomware system took out their network. It's crippled their city infrastructure. That's crippling. Now, that's, of course, related to knocking out the individual computers, but knocking out the internet would knock out all these computer systems. So what happens when you find yourself in an emergency and all of the systems go out? Well, you got to have a plan, all right? So this is talking a little bit about the new app, which there's some concern about because there was a big earthquake that hit in California not far from LA, but nobody's app alerted them to it. And then they all hear about it. And they're like, of course, it did what it was supposed to do, but it still would be nice if the thing said, hey, there's an earthquake, but it's 20 miles north of you. I think that would be a valid notification to get. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what caused a little bit of stuff. So what do you do when there is an emergency? Do you have enough systems on hand to survive for a few days, for a week? I mean, if you guys remember, was it last summer or was it 2 summers ago? It might have been last summer, in fact. I'm pretty sure it was last summer. We had some tornadoes came down, knocked out a lot of the main lines through town. Several of us, I think I was without electricity for 36 hours. Across the main street from me, they were without electricity for 3 days. How do you survive with that? Do you have the backup systems in place? Can you continue to get your work done? What types of infrastructure do you have? So, of course, in my case, I have enough solar systems that I can actually run a minimal office pretty much perpetually on solar backups. But, what happens if it's long term? What happens if it's a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks and the lunatics start coming out and roaming the streets? Well, that's why I got 5,000 bullets in my closet, yo. All right. Make sure that you have batteries and good batteries. Of course, I have rechargeable backup systems, so I can charge batteries and stuff off of the solar platforms as well. Make sure you have flashlights and know where they are. Make sure you have some basic food reserves. Make sure you have some water reserves. You know, I always have at least 5 or 6 gallons of water on hand. I'm not anything like what you'd call a prepper, but there is a good logic to having some good stores on hand. That's very important. And so the reality is we are becoming way too dependent on a fragile internet as a society, and it's a problematic thing. And what I will encourage everybody to do is start to moving back old school. You know, start doing more stuff on papers and pencils. Keep a manual checkbook. Pay your bills with checks. Go buy your groceries in cash. You will be so much better for your life when you do that. And have some backups in place. Have the shortwave radios and make sure they work. I have a bunch more of them, so I just happen to have a bad one in the car. So have your shortwave radios. Make sure that you have water stores. Make sure you have, you know, some basic protection on hand. All these are basic things that you want to make sure that you're doing. So let me know your tips. Are you too dependent on the fragile internet? What would happen in a long-term outage for you? Let us know in the comments down below.